Welcome back. In this video, we're going to start on the YelpCamp application that we're going to work on for the rest of this course. We're going to start by getting the basic setup going, getting Express app going, and having our first few routes and templates. But before we talk about that, I just want to explain the workflow here and how this will work as we continually add different features. I want you to be able to see the code at any point in time. I don't want you just to see the final solution. So what I'm going to do is work in different folders. So I have a YelpCamp directory. And then inside of YelpCamp, I'm going to add different versions. So you don't have to do this. You'll be able to just continually add to one version yourself. If you want to follow along and make different versions, I'll always point out which version we're on. But the goal is that if you wanted to look back at what I added between version 2 and version 3, you could open up the version 2 and version 3 directories and compare them. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get started here. What we're going to do is set up the basic app. We'll install Express and EJS, we'll get the views directory going, and then we'll add two different routes. So we're going to have a home page, basically like a welcome to YelpCamp. Here's a little blurb about what we do. Here's a sign up button. Here's a contact link. That won't actually work just yet. And then from there, we're going to create the campgrounds page, which will be the main page of our app that will list all of the campgrounds in our database. And we don't have a database yet, so it's just going to be an array of campgrounds, just like we did in the last video with the friends, where we had an array of friends. Very soon, we will be migrating to a new database. For now, a campground is only going to have two different pieces of information. By the end of the course, campgrounds will have 10 to 15 different pieces, but for now, it's just a name, like Salmon Creek or Dewey Point, or whatever the name of our campground is. And then we're going to have an image that we can display, and the image will just be a URL. So let's get going. I'll start by running npm init, and then we'll hit enter here, and enter again. We'll just call this YelpCamp v1. I'll make app.js my entry point. There we go. Author, and hit enter one more time. Okay, now let's run npm install express and EJS -- save. I haven't shown you this yet, but this is a much easier way. If you want to install multiple packages at once, you just separate them by a space. And if we look at the package.json, you can see it has EJS and Express. So now let's create the app.js and open that up. And inside of here, add our basic Express importing, which you should be pretty comfortable with by now. Require Express, and then the app variable equals Express as a function being executed. And then we'll jump down and do the app.listen, which also you should be pretty familiar with by now. Process.env.port, process.env.ip, and the callback. And in here, I'll do a console.log that says YelpCamp has started. Or let's do the YelpCamp server, just like that. And save. And now let's go back and start by adding our landing page. And like most applications, the landing page is on the root path. So we're just going to add an app.get / and we'll start with just a res.send to make sure things work okay. And we'll just send this will be the landing page soon, and save. And then we'll start the server. Make sure we get YelpCamp server has started. And then we go back and just refresh on our root path. Okay, and we get the response. That's all we're looking for. Now let's go ahead and set up our templates. So we need to make a views directory. So make directory views, and we'll make a template called landing.ejs. Inside the views directory, landing.ejs, there we go, and then we'll open that up, views / landing, and we'll just put a very simple bit of markup in here, landing page, and then down here we can put a paragraph, welcome to YelpCamp. And of course, this will all be changed and will be styled very differently by the end of the course. But for now, we just want to make sure that things are working. Then let's go back to app.js. And the first thing we'll do is change this so that it's a res.render landing. And we'll leave off the .ejs. And to do that, we need to add in the app.set view engine to be EJS. And then we don't have to write .ejs here. And we'll save, restart the server, app.js, refresh, and we get our landing page template. Great. Next, let's work on the campgrounds route. So we're going to have an app.get, and the URL should be /campgrounds. And this should show all of the campgrounds that we have, which right now we don't have anything, but we will shortly. So request and response, just like this. Save, and then we need to define the campgrounds array, which remember will only be an array temporarily. The next big change we're going to make is adding a database in and having our campgrounds be saved to the database. For now, it's an array, and each campground has a name and an image. So it's going to look like this, where we have an array, and then each item in the array is an object, and each one has a name, and then let's just say name is Salmon Creek, somewhere I went camping recently, and then image, and then it will be an URL of an image like http whatever www.image.com. There we go. And then we'll have an array of these. So we might have 10 different campgrounds, 100 by the end of the course, and each one of them has a name and an image. And then eventually they'll have things like latitude and longitude, city and state, address, capacity, seasonality, all these different attributes, but we're starting simple, name and image. Let's go back to app.js, and what we're going to do is define that array. And we can start by just doing it in here. So var, we'll call it campgrounds, is equals an array, and then inside the array, and let's format this a little bit better, there we go. Inside the array, we're going to have some starter objects, and the first one will have name, and I'll just go with Salmon Creek. You can just make anything up, and we'll have image, and I'll come back and fill in the images. And then the next one we'll do, just make up another site. We'll call it, let's do Granite Hill, and then one more, which we'll call Mountain Goats Rest. All right, so 3 campsites, 3 totally fictional names. And for images, I'm actually going to use some Creative Commons photos just so I don't run into any issues. These are not going to correspond to any of the campsites that I've actually listed, but I'm just going to pick some images here. Let's go with this one to start. So I'm going to copy the image URL, go back in here, and that will be Mountain Goats Rest. Why not? And then we'll go back again, and I'll take this one here, copy image URL, and this will be Salmon Creek. And then we need one more, and we'll just take this one. Of course, this is not really a campsite, but that's besides the point here. I encourage you to use real campsite names and real campsite images if you care. If not, if you hate camping, which is something I thought about, I did worry that this might alienate some people. But if you do hate camping, which I guess is understandable, you could easily change this application over to something else once we finish it. You could make it into an events app, a parties application, a restaurant review site, anything like that. But I recommend you wait until the end of the course to do that so that you don't get confused with naming and different variables that we have. So campgrounds it is for now, fake campgrounds, and we'll save. Make sure we add our commas in between the different elements in the array. There we go. And we'll start by rendering a template, res.render, and it's going to be called campgrounds. And we're not going to pass the data through just yet. We're just going to make sure the template is working correctly. Now we need to stop the server, touch a new file, views/campgrounds, .ejs, and then we'll open that up, just like that. And in here, we'll add an H1. This is the campgrounds page, and save. And let's make sure that we see that page when we start the server up. We can refresh, and then let's go to /campgrounds, and we get this is the campgrounds page. And while we're here, it would be nice to add some links. So I'm going to add a link on the landing page that says view all the campgrounds. And to do that, I need to go to the landing template, and just at the bottom, I'll add an anchor tag, add the href attribute, and the href needs to be /campgrounds, and I'll just say view all campgrounds, and save, restart the server, refresh. View all campgrounds now takes us to the campgrounds page. All right, so now let's go and make sure that we pass the data through our campgrounds into the res.render call, and then we can loop through all of it and display each image and each name in our template. We'll start by going to app.js and adding in that second argument here, which is an object of all the data we want to pass through. And we'll pass in campgrounds under the name campgrounds. So remember, this is the data we're passing in, and this is the name we want to give it. We could call this anything we wanted, but it's common to see them name the same thing. So we'll save now and go back to our template, and we'll start by just doing this, campgrounds. And if we see anything, it will look like object if we've done it correctly. Then we know that we've passed the data through. Restart the server, refresh, there we go, an array with 3 objects inside. So now let's loop through and display each title or each name and image. So I'll keep these brackets here, but I'll get rid of the equal sign, and we'll do a for each. So that will be campgrounds.for each, and then pass in that anonymous function, the callback, and we'll call it campground. And we'll hit enter here, and then we need to go back and make sure that we add in the correct closing EJS brackets, and then down here, we need to enclose this with EJS as well. Okay, so that should loop through campgrounds, and then what we want to do for each one, we'll just display the name first. So we'll start with an li, why not? And we'll just do our EJS with the equal sign, and I'll make some space so that it's a little easier to see what's happening. And we're just going to display inside the li campground.name, and save. I'll space this out. Now let's load up the page and refresh this, and we get our 3 campground names. The last thing I want to do is make sure that we display the images. So we'll go back in here, and rather than an li, let's change this so that we have a div tag for each campground, and in the div tag we'll display let's do h4 with the campground name, and then below it we'll put an image tag. And what we need to do is give the image a source. And inside the quotes, rather than a URL like this, whatever the URL is, we're going to put the image from the campground. And we can't just do campground.image, we need those EJS brackets. So we have to do it inside the quotes, which is a little confusing to some of my students at first, because campground.image is already a string, as you can see here. But remember that when we take this and add it into the template, those quotes don't come along with it. It's just added as text. So it would look like this, http:// whatever. We need quotes around it. So we have to make sure that we're adding the EJS tags inside of the quotes, just like that. Okay, so then what we want to do is campground.image. Make sure we used image, there we go, IMAGE, and we have that spelled here the exact same way. And I'll stop the server, restart it. Let's go back and refresh the page. And we get the 3 campgrounds with the 3 images. All right, great. So that's all I wanted to do in this video, was get the basic structure set up of our 2 routes. Let's go back, make sure we did all the things we set out to do. So add the landing page. Yes, we did that. And add the campgrounds page that lists all the campgrounds. We also did that. Each campground has a name and an image. All right.